So I've made some videos about aspiring champions and Be'lakor, but what if we combine the power of the two units? And that's why we're here, on the battlefield fighting against the Tomb Kings with a full aspiring champion frontline. Unfortunately, they're capped at 3 units, so that is all we're getting for infantry. The rest of the money is going into mobility and Be'lakor, who is bringing a bunch of spells and supporting abilities, including Darkmaster, Enfeebling Foe, Shadow Shroud, Malkov's Miasma, and also Pit of Shades. And then on the side we have a lot of mobility with basically 10 units of cavalry, 4 of them Marauder Horsemen, 2 of them Horsemen with throwing axes, and 4 more Hellstriders of Slaanesh. On the opposite side of the battlefield, we have a front line of Eyes of Desert and Skeleton Horse Archers, basically a bunch of firepower from the Tomb Kings to either snipe out my skirmishing cavalry and light cavalry, or just using these stalkers to blast away at my poor large monster, namely Be'lakor. Now for the infantry main formations, a whole lot of skeleton spears as the front, and then backed up by some skeleton warriors as a bit more of a body, and then further back skeleton spears and a couple tomb gods with halberds, a more elite backbone for the Tomb Kings formation, and then we have a single unit of Necropolis Knights, and there's also a Cascade of Souls, a perfect counter to Chaos Infantry Rush, but there's only aspiring champions who are poor targets for artillery. Now for the single entities here and spell support, Lich Priest of Light, bringing only Net of Amantok, which is not a bad choice considering so much firepower that can focus down my Chaos units. All they need to do is net down one of my units and start blasting away, and I would be taking massive damage. For Lord Choice, Arkan the Black is leading the army with his Spirit Leech as well as the staple skeleton summons. And then there's also one single Nehekara Horseman, and that's basically it. And with both army builds done, let's get the action going and see if aspiring champions can carry their own weight. The great thing about the aspiring champions is that they are basically impervious to explosive artillery, just like the Cascade of Souls here and all those small arms fire from the Skeleton Horse Archers. So my opponent was forced to aim their artillery at my rather cheap mobility. The Hellstriders of Slaanesh at only 600 gold cost. They do take some damage from the splash damage, but still, with the trees blocking some of the explosions, the projectiles missing, and also they are being fairly spaced out, they're not taking as much damage as regular infantry would. On top of that, being cavalry, they actually have more HP per model than infantry units, so they actually didn't lose that many models in the bombardment, while the champions steadily pushing forward. On the far flank, instead, the Hellstriders will be pushed away by a combination of Skeleton Horse Archer fire and a bunch of other melee units from the Tomb Kings. Being the light armored glass cannon they will not be able to fight against all these Tomb Kings units in hand-to-hand combat and will be falling back, but I do have my own skirmishing forces threatening to chip away the health of the Necropolis Knights here. Arkan the Black spamming those Spirit Leeches, hoping to drain away and weaken the health of my Hellstriders, and with a counter charge from the Necropolis Knights, these lightly armored Slaanesh cavalry will be quickly destroyed. On the Tomb King's right flank, there are some Hellstriders engaging some Nehekara Horsemen, hoping to use their charge bonus and anti-large to cut down the lightly armored skeleton cavalry. But unfortunately, with the Tomb God support and the Nehekara Horsemen being a fairly good mobility themselves, with 34 defense they actually held, and the Slaanesh units will be dispatched. Although I did drop in a Hellstriders through the gap from the Tomb King's front line and will be charging into the Cascade of Souls, silencing it, doing some fairly decent damage at the Tomb King's artillery, while Be'lakor is landing and will be engaging in melee combat, hoping to shut down the Eyes of the Desert here in melee attack, as they do not have the best of melee stats. With only 38 melee defense, Be'lakor with armor piercing and also 70 melee attack can easily punch through their protection. But Tomb Kings countered with a beautiful Net of Amantok, and then allowing all these Eyes of the Desert to shoot at Be'lakor at point blank range. Thankfully, I did have the Shadow Shroud protecting Be'lakor with a 40% damage resistance, while at the back, a Pit of Shades was dropped right in the middle of a bunch of skeletons, nuking the leadership of those skeletons and in turn giving Be'lakor some healing with the Lord of Torment. On top of that, the spell also gave Be'lakor a bunch of kill counts, which is vital for Be'lakor to activate the item, the Blade of Shadows, buffing up his attack and weapon damage with every single kill. And then there are the aspiring champions hacking away at all the skeleton spears, These guys are almost 100 kills. These guys not that many kills, but they are pushing, threatening the backline of the Tomb King's army. Be'lakor eating some Spirit Leech, which is a great way to drain away the health of the powerful Demon Prince, the first of Demon Prince. In fact, now there are a bunch of Hellstriders at the back reserved, or in other words, forgotten earlier. They will be charging into the fray using their anti-large and also double charge bonus, thanks to their rear charge into the backs of all these Necropolis Knights. Being completely surrounded, the Necropolis Knights are crumbling, as they are forced to weather the skirmishing fire while fighting anti-large cavalry and also Be'lakor himself. And with the surrounding units in negative leadership, Be'lakor is receiving even more healing. While the back Tomb Kings are being pushed away by aspiring champions, as the Tomb King's artillery is moving back with their skeleton chaff slowly running out. So instead, the Tomb Kings will be rushing forward, desperately trying to pin down my aspiring champions. However, champions actually do decently against Tomb Gods, which is basically a mid-tier infantry with their stats and their price range. Be'lakor eating another Spirit Leech, which is not a big deal, he will be able to heal it back up. And in the middle over here, aspiring champions fighting against summoned Ushapti. They're taking some decent damage from the armor-piercing anti-infantry attacks of the Tomb King's construct, but still, they will be holding with their impressive leadership, biding their time waiting for the summoned construct to disappear. While my skirmishing cavalry will be pulling back hopefully to chip away some health of my opponent units, skeleton horse archers hoping to tie down my marauder horses, but the aspiring champions, like an unbreakable bulwark, will be screening away these cavalry, actually able to push them back with their mass increase. Now over here, Be'lakor is dropping in once again, did some nice damage to the casket, and it will be dropping soon, while the Eyes of the Desert are still taking some significant damage from the relentless pursuit of Be'lakor, who is now mitigating the Spirit Leech damage with a Shadow Shroud once again. Hellstriders are still roaming around as well, hoping to hunt down the Eyes of Desert with their anti-large attacks, while all these aspiring champions are just pinning down so many skeletons and tomb gods. They basically took the brunt of the Tomb King's infantry forces, alleviating a lot of pressure for my mobility units. Some of them sandwiching some skeleton spears as an anvil, and the Marauder horsemen will throwing axes at the hammer, slamming into their back now with even more Marauder horses coming in, dropping their leadership into crumbling territory, allowing myself to maximize the damage against these lightly armored skeleton spears with rear charges. While in the middle here, the Eyes of the Desert are still being hunted down by the Hellstriders. They did put a volley into Be'lakor, did some nice damage, but Be'lakor will be quickly retreating and charging into these wavering spears, using their crumbling leadership as well as Be'lakor's Lord of Torment to replenish the hit points on my lord. On the other side, some champions are harassed by missile fire and also dealing with a horde of skeletons, but they are holding firm. Champions don't take much damage from these area of effect spells due to their low model count, but those skeletons got absolutely obliterated. While at the back, the Eyes of Desert have been secured, as the pushing aspiring champions has been bogged down by a bunch of tomb gods with halberds. After taking massive damage in battle, their leadership is slowly running out. This allowed the regiment of renowned stalkers to start aiming at the other, healthier aspiring champion unit, who are busy fighting tomb gods and leaving their back exposed to the armor-piercing lasers. But these aspiring champions can and will hold. With their 45 melee defense, they actually can defend themselves fairly well from the tomb gods with only 25 attack, even with those armor-piercing ignoring their armor. While the aspiring champions with their massive weapon strength at 96, combined with the splash attacks, is doing massive damage to the relatively light armored tomb gods. On top of that, their 40 attack compared to 47 defense on the tomb gods means that they still have some chances of landing their hits. With that, the tomb gods actually are losing this combat decisively, while the aspiring champions will be holding. Be'lakor at the back dropping in, tying down a bunch of skeleton horse archers who are hoping to pin him down for the Eyes of Desert to focus fire, but a pit of shades, quickly thinning out this crowd of skeleton cavalry, making it easier for Be'lakor to extract himself from the blob. And of course, he will be tanking the damage with Shadow Shroud once again, greatly reducing the effectiveness of the Sepulchral Stalker projectiles. While Be'lakor is busy distracting enemy fire, there are some Marauder horses maneuvering closer to support. And most of my infantry are actually freeing themselves up from the skeleton chaff of the Tomb King's army, since most of these chaff have been cut down by my aspiring champions. This aspiring champion's not doing too well here, being chased away, but the rest, absolutely great performances. They have held their ground throughout most of the battle, 200 kills and counting as well, and a chevron, now even eliminating the last of the tomb gods with halberd. Over here, Eyes of the Desert are on their last leg as Be'lakor drops in, punch them in the face, dropping the last few unit models, and they'll be crumbling into dust once again. Arkan the Black dropping in a skeleton warrior summon, hoping to add more bodies into the fight, but he simply can't tie down Be'lakor with only chaff, and another Pit of Shades comes in, thinning out these skeleton warriors ranks and also hitting some of those tomb gods with halberds as well. At this point, without the sepulchral fire, Be'lakor is free to pick his engagement. Once he pinned down any depleted enemy units, the Marauder horses will be free to hammer home into the anvil that is their lord. Balance of power is in the favor of Tomb Kings, that's because of the healthy single entities on their side, but Be'lakor is still fighting, and it means that I still have a decent chance to come back. With the horses and aspiring champions tying down all those Tomb Kings infantry, now Arkan the Black is exposed, pinned down by a bunch of Marauder horsemen, being hit by the Dark Master. His melee attack is significantly dropped, and Be'lakor dropping in with the charge bonus, doing some massive impact damage. A few swift strikes on Arkan the Black and he is down to half health. Skeleton warriors and tomb gods rush in, hoping to screen out Be'lakor, while Arkan the Black extract himself to safety, and the Marauder horsemen pushing in as well. And to the Tomb King's dismay, Be'lakor will be flying off into the skies once again. Some of my aspiring champions are routed, but there are still some fighting in the fray, dominating the tomb gods with their significant stats advantage, while there are more aspiring champions regrouping from afar. Skeleton spears on the far side marching all the way back into the middle of the battlefield. As they have been pushing away my units, I'll be pulling in some regrouped horsemen as well. And at this point, despite the balance of power, things are looking grim for the Tomb Kings. There are only 2 caster units who are not exactly great at melee fighting, holding up the balance of power, and Be'lakor is just dropping in. He has been healing himself up with his passive ability, the Lord of Torment, that activates whenever enemy leadership is wavering nearby, recovering a lot of lost HP throughout the battle. And then of course he has been getting almost 400 kills, activating the Blade of Shadow, and that's only 78% of intensity, but he is already at over 100 attack and 676 weapon strength. That is more than enough to wipe out all these remaining caster lords. Even with the skeleton shafts surrounding Be'lakor, Arkan the Black simply do not have any means to protect himself from this souped up Be'lakor. With another few hits landing, Be'lakor quickly drops, crumbling to dust yet again, dying a second death. At the same time, some Marauder horses routed while the skeleton spears are crumbling. And all that's left in the battle is the single Lich Priest here, now further debuffed by an enfeebling foe. The horses might be running, but that also means that there's nothing between Be'lakor and the poor Lich Priest. With a few more slaps, that's basically it for the last of Tomb King's leadership. Army losses is hit, and that shall be the victory of 2 undivided units, Be'lakor and his aspiring champions. GG, well played to my opponent here, with a very good pressure from the Eyes of Desert, as well as some of these skeleton horse archers skirmishing down some of my Marauder horses and whatnot. However, despite my mistake in using my mobility, most of them being bogged down by skeletons or simply get shot up by a combination of casket and skeleton horse archers, I was still able to pull back this game simply because Be'lakor is such a powerful lord with healing, damage dealing output, and chaff clearing abilities such as Pit of Shades. The idea of this build is basically using aspiring champions to drive away all those frontline chaff and push into the backline with their decent damage dealing output. At the same time, there is not a lot of good targets for my opponent's anti-infantry artillery, so unfortunately they have no good ways to kill off my aspiring champions unless they brought in, say, worse things. Not even the Sharpty summons were able to do much damage to my aspiring champions in the end. And with all these infantry being pressured by my own aspiring champion frontline, I will have a lot more freedom with Be'lakor and my mobility, using them to harass and shut down the casket, tie down the Eyes of Desert, despite it actually earned back quite a bit of value thanks to the Net of Emmentalk and the crossfire onto Be'lakor. Still, after dealing with all the Necropolis Knights, Casket, and also Eyes of Desert, there's really nothing else to stop the Lord of Shadows from rampaging among the Tomb King's armies, The Lich Priest and Arcane the Black simply can't fight him in 1-to-1 melee combat, not even 2-to-1 melee combat really. Especially when the rest of the infantry support are distracted by my aspiring champions. So that's basically it for today's battle showcasing Be'lakor and this rather niche unit aspiring champions. I hope viewers you enjoy it, and if you want to see more, be sure to hit the like and subscribe to receive updates whenever I upload new videos to the channel, including wild army builds, battle replays, and also tips and strategies for Total War Warhammer multiplayer. And if you have any replays you want to showcase, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. And yeah, that's basically it for today's battle. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.